With the final pay-per-view of the year in the books, there's only one woman we could get on the program to digest what was a really fun night of fights in Las Vegas. You know her from her amazing work on UFC, on ESPN, her reporting work. Of course, you've seen her commentate for Invicta before, for Phoenix Rising. And of course, she's a former fighter herself. Future commentator for the UFC as well, I believe. I'm just going to call it right now. Laura Sanko, thanks for joining us yet again in the middle of the morning from America. I feel like we're very lucky to have these appearances from you. And I don't know how you're so awake. I have to admit, I don't know how you're so awake for these post.
It is a total facade. I am so incredibly tired right now. But I'm going to put my big girl pants on because I love talking fights with you guys. And yeah, listen, it's for real. I always appreciate coming on here. So the feeling's mutual, although that intro was equal parts. This was the only lady we could get. And then the rest of it was so overly generous that, yeah, how could I not come back?
Yeah, I mean, all completely genuine. The pleasure is, as always, ours, Laura. Thank you for continuing the tradition with us of talking fights late, immediately after you finish work, covering the event that was obviously UFC 256, Figueiredo versus Moreno. I mean, I don't know how you're going to sleep after this with all the adrenaline from a fight like that, potential fight of the year. What were your big takeaways from what was a crazy fight? You know, the insane shots that both men took. Moreno's toughness really taking it to the champ. Figueiredo sort of lasting, considering he only throws power shots. And then the fouls that just added to the drama of this fight. How do you sort of digest something like this?
I mean, how do you digest something like that? It's hard to take it all in. And as I was driving here, I was trying to put my thoughts together because I knew I'd be talking to you guys, and they're still just all a jumble. But I think the biggest takeaways for me were a couple things that you just mentioned. The toughness of Brandon Moreno is absolutely insane. The shots that he took, and never really at any point did he seem like he was getting his bell rung. I mean, I was so impressed with his ability to march forward and just stay in the fight, you know, keep composed, and just continue to bring it, and really change the tides of the fight, you know, in those later rounds. The first couple rounds, I felt like Figueiredo just had zero respect for Moreno, which, you know, is kind of cool to see. We like that swagger in our champions. He was marching him down, or doing his best to march him down, but it was fascinating to see that sort of play out, where as he continued to march and land these hard shots, that at times would even physically move Moreno back, but not, you could see that it just wasn't rattling him at all. It was so cool to see the chin, the physical chin and the mental chin of Brandon Moreno on display tonight. That was definitely one of my big takeaways from that fight.
Absolutely. I mean, Figgy definitely got jiggy, and also Moreno with that, I don't know if you call it a chin, but down there, whatever that's the made out of, that's got to be steel as well. That's got to be pure steel as well, because that was incredible. Just quickly, though, who did you have winning the fight? Did you agree with the decision? Was it a draw for you?
I have such a hard time scoring fights when I'm reporting on them because I watch them so differently. When am I dissatisfied by a draw? Yes, on one hand, because I want to have a winner, right? I like the clarity of having that loose end tied up. But when I think about that fight, I'm okay with it being a draw because it was so close. It was insanely close. I actually think a case could be made that Moreno won. I had Figueiredo winning early, though. I literally, it's hard for me to give you a really clear answer without having the time to rewatch the fight. How did you guys score it?
I think the craziest thing for me was that the last round, one judge gave it to Moreno. And I think that was the round where a lot of people saw it pretty clearly for Figueiredo. So had that judge given it to Figueiredo, like I think a lot of us scored it, you've got Figueiredo retaining. And then you add to the fact the shot to the balls, the multiple fouls, which obviously added to the drama of the fight. But, you know, Figueiredo, in a way, cost himself this fight. So in saying that, like you mentioned, how can you really complain too much when we're going to get a rematch anyway?
Yeah, and I'm curious, Laura, I saw Dana White was talking about how, you know, Figueiredo had to go to the hospital in the middle of the night and he wasn't feeling well. How much of that did you know about going into the event? Did you know that he wasn't all 100% going in there? And
single. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, because I mean, you couldn't tell in the fight, right? We knew he had a tough weight cut that he had to make yet again, but it's a pretty incredible performance for a guy that was in the hospital in the middle of the morning.
Yeah, I learned about it during the fight. Someone mentioned it to me, like, hey, but they sort of made it sound like it was maybe a little bit more of a weight cut issue, that he was vomiting after weigh-ins, because I mean, man, rehydrating is a science, and if you don't do it just right, sometimes it can really upset your stomach. But the way that he described it, and the way that it was described later, it definitely sounds like more of a case of, you know, some sort of stomach bug or food poisoning. I'm not here to diagnose exactly what it was, but clearly it was bad enough for him to be in the hospital. So no, I did not know about that coming into the fight, and it makes his performance that much more impressive. It makes, I don't know, it just, everything about tonight was unreal. And you know, when you asked my biggest takeaway earlier, that was the biggest takeaway from the fight. But if you take the picture out even bigger, it just makes me love the flyweight division all over again. You know, there was a time where I was a big fan of the flyweight division because I love the fast-paced action. I'm not necessarily here for huge knockouts. I like big knockouts, but don't get me wrong, but I love fast-paced action. I love scrambles. That's what gets me going in a fight. And so I was always a fan of the flyweight division. But then there was a period of time where, for whatever reason, I can't necessarily put my finger on it, it wasn't a huge draw for me. And tonight, that fight made me fall in love with the flyweight division all over again.
Right, because if Figueiredo went in there and just got another fast finish, it wouldn't have been nearly as exciting or fun as what we got to witness in this war. And you also learn a lot more about, you know, the fighters when you have a war like that. And in this case, it's one of the rare fights where nobody's stock went down, not only because of the draw. I feel like even if Figueiredo won, regardless, Moreno's stock went up. People believe in him as a, you know, #1 contender and a challenger for the belt. And then Figueiredo, obviously, you know, going the distance in such spectacular fashion. I am wondering, though, because we are sort of coming to a close of the year, where does this rank for you as far as, you know, some of the best fights of the year? And I know that's a really tough question, but we've got fights like, you know, Weili Zhang and Joanna. We've had some great ones this year, in a year where at one point it looked like we weren't going to have any. Where does this one sort of come in for you?
It's definitely top 3. I mean, recency bias is a real thing, and you don't get more recent than whatever, an hour. I don't even know what time it is right now, but not that long ago. You have to put Weili, Joanna Jędrzejczyk in there. And I feel like you have to put Tony Gaethje in there. So those would be my top 3. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I'm notoriously bad about remembering off the top of my head, and then someone will mention it. I'm like, oh my gosh, how could I ever have forgotten about that fight? But that's how quickly we move on in this sport. But definitely, it has to be top 3 for sure for the fights this year. It was incredible.
Absolutely. I also enjoyed Danny Hook versus Dustin Poirier, but I think no matter... Yeah, I think one thing that we can all agree on is that there should be a rematch, because it was a draw. It's going to be a bigger fight now because everybody's going to be hyped for it. And as we've seen in the past, a lot of these fights end up, you know, having a little bit of a journey where guys fight a second time, then down the road they fight a third time. Then when they're 60, they fight for the Legends Only League. So, and Snoop Dogg raps before they come out. So
why not?
Who even knows what's going to happen in the future? But the rematch sounds good to all of us, I think. Now, let's talk about Tony Ferguson versus Charles Oliveira. Tony Ferguson coming in with people having a lot of question marks around what kind of Tony Ferguson we'll see after that Justin Gaethje loss. So many fans, you know, really, I suppose, grew up with that Tony Ferguson win streak, grew up really rooting for him. And a lot of the new fans kind of being like, whoa, Tony Ferguson may not be the same guy that we, you know, all were sort of looking at before this Justin Gaethje fight. I'm curious, what was your main takeaway from seeing Tony Ferguson today? I mean, that arm, not tapping to that armbar and the heart that he showed is definitely the Tony Ferguson of old. But is it Charles Oliveira's skill and him just being that much better, or is there a little bit of a slowdown for Tony Ferguson, in your opinion?
I do think that there has been a bit of a slowdown for Tony, and it's hard for me to put my finger on whether it's a speed issue, whether it's a mentality issue. I do think. Listen, you can't write Tony Ferguson off. I'm absolutely not here to do that, because that guy's nowhere near. I think I saw someone like, oh, should Tony retire? No, Tony's not. He's not anywhere close to having that conversation. But have we potentially seen, a tipping point in his career? I think it's a real possibility. There are fights that change people, and that was the big question coming into this fight. I still don't know. I don't think you can fully answer that question for a few more fights, right? I think that, but I think partly we saw a direction taken. This was not a competitive fight. Charles Oliveira went out there and big brothered him from bell to bell, and that's a statement I never thought I'd hear myself say. That's crazy.
Yeah.
If you would have told me, gosh, 3-4 years ago, that Charles Oliveira would big brother Tony Ferguson, I would have said, you're freaking crazy. Because as much as Tony had this reputation for being the boogeyman, and he earned that reputation, Charles Oliveira, for whatever reason, had earned a reputation for finding ways out of fights and being a little bit mentally fragile, and even physically fragile at times. Didn't come across as a physically imposing fighter. And the guy that we saw tonight was not only checking all the boxes in terms of mentality, but he was so physical out there. And it's just so fascinating to me to see the evolution in his game. He's always had an amazing ground game, but then to see this striking prominence come on in the last couple of years, and then the mentality click in, and really see him go out there and just take control of a fight from a guy who is notoriously difficult to spook in a fight, was just, man, it was incredible to see. I don't think we can write off Tony Ferguson. I think it's too early to do that. But I do think it's fair to have the conversation. Did Justin Gaethje change Tony Ferguson? We've seen that in the past. Robbie Lawler changed a lot of fighters.
Yeah.
And they were never quite the same since. And Justin Gaethje has that type of style. It's not like, it's different than getting a big knockout, being in a sustained war that you are slowly losing consistently in those last rounds. It's different, and it wears on you differently. And man, it can really change a lot of things moving forward. I hope that Tony comes back. I love watching him fight, and I'm not ready to completely write him off yet, for sure.
Yeah, 100% right. And Luke Thomas actually said the same thing about how, beatings that are consistent over multiple rounds, they can take a lot more confidence away from fighters, as opposed to, say, a flash knockout that they can easily, somewhat bounce back from. I want to talk about Oliveira and sort of his overtaking of Tony Ferguson in the division, just how amazing he looked. But just quickly, I mentioned confidence. Nothing's going to make you feel more confident this holiday season than a fresh, smooth set of balls to drop on Santa's lap to get those big, juicy presents this year. And our good friends at Manscaped are delivering exactly that. Get the Lawnmower 3.0, the best grooming device on the planet, with a 7,000 RPM motor and LED light, 90 minutes of battery life, and it's waterproof. You can drop in the ocean and still shave your balls for, I don't know, King Poseidon or whoever you're trying to impress this holiday season. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right. Don't be on your partner's naughty list. Get those balls shaved and ready for the Christmas season. Go to Manscaped now. Use the code word submission. Get 20% off and free shipping. That's at manscaped.com. Get that weed whack off in style.
That's right. Ho, 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 while we're giving away holiday deals, our good friends at PureVPN will help you browse the internet safely, free from trackers or anybody collecting data on you or stealing your information. Or if you want to go on Netflix all around the world and check out what other regions have on their streaming list, or any other streaming platform for that matter, Disney Plus or any of the other ones, you can do that with PureVPN. 88% off for the holiday season, and you can get it for such crazy deals. I believe it comes down to $1.32 a month if you sign up for 5 years. That's only $79 over 5 years, and if you use the code submission, an additional 10% off. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right. Watch the Japanese version of Home Alone today ahead of Christmas. That's the one where the bandits actually get in, catch the kid, and kill him. So check that out. That's with PureVPN. Get that No, of course not. How can you kill it? How can you do that? That's the latest sequels. That's purevpn.com/submission. Go there now, get that extra 10% off.
Yeah, all right. Now we're going to talk about Charles Oliveira and just how fantastic he looked in this fight for what is essentially a turning point in his career. I think it was that moment where Oliveira body locked Tony and just took him down to the ground with ease. And you remember the guy at featherweight, Oliveira, you know, he wasn't known for his wrestling at all. And what's funny is that, like, with Tony, you know, we always wanted to see this Khabib fight, and we thought it would be a competitive fight. It was like a 50-50 fight. I almost feel like Khabib got a win tonight, because seeing Oliveira do that to Tony, people are kind of like, oh man, you got to assume that Khabib would have done something similar, if not worse. So it's crazy the way this fight's kind of changed so many trajectories. And who knows whether Khabib will fight again, but if he does come back for number 30, you got to write that Tony fight off, right? That's, you know, he just wouldn't have any interest in that. But go on, Laura.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that fight's not going to happen now for sure, even if Khabib does come back. But my mind is still hung up on Khabib Ferguson the first time, because I don't know that it would have looked like. I mean, we're doing MMA math. It's a fool's errand.
Different fighters, right, Laura? You got a younger Tony with a I believe he had like a blonde mohawk at the time.
Yeah. The less developed striking of Khabib, you know, much more green on the feet and just only shooting for takedowns. I do think we maybe would have seen a different fight, but we don't live in that reality, so we can move on.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, you know, based on, I guess, the data that we collected off Oliveira, this fight, how far do you think he can go in the division now with this skill set? I think shocking a lot of people tonight with how complete a fighter he is. And now you got, obviously, you know, Conor and Poirier fighting at the start of next year. You got, you know, Gaethje still in the mix. You got Chandler in the mix, Dan Hooker, a bunch of other guys. Do you sort of see Oliveira now as not only this is a coming out party for him, but maybe even turning the corner as, wow, this is a guy who he might even hold the belt and go all the way into the division?
You have to. I mean, you have to see him as having that capability after that fight tonight. I do think, man, I think that he has a harder time with a Justin Gaethje. You know, it's interesting because as much as Justin Gaethje does not have, you know, the perfect record, he is a difficult matchup for about anybody. He's a nightmare for about anybody. And I think that that'd be a tough fight for Charles. I was kind of joking with Dana earlier tonight when I did my interview with him. I want to go back to Fight Island and go old school, have someone dig a pit. Let's do a one night 4-man tournament. Charles can be the alternate. Let's figure out who the undisputed lightweight champion is, assuming, of course, that Khabib is done. He has stated he is. It's a little bit up in the air, but so many unanswered questions. It's hard to like really map out what this division looks like, but we're going to have a lot of them answered in January.
Yeah, absolutely. I reckon even a Dustin Poirier Oliveira fight, if he loses against Conor McGregor, could be a fun one for him to keep building his name. But we'll see what happens with that one. Just real quick, Laura, I know that the UFC is in this tough process at the moment. It's almost like when you have to break up with that girlfriend or boyfriend in your life, where they're letting go a lot of the favorites from the company. And I know there's, you know, Anderson Silva's out of there, and people are looking at Tony and Junior Dos Santos as the next potential people to go. What do you think tonight means for the legends like Junior Dos Santos and Tony Ferguson? Do you believe the UFC needs to look at some of these legends a little bit closely before they let them go? Because, I mean, there's an argument there. A guy like Tony could still provide a lot of value to the company and also bring so much eyes to the sport. And then I guess there's that discussion about Junior Dos Santos as well. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Listen, you have to keep Tony around. You have to keep Tony around. I don't think that Tony needs to be in that discussion yet. I think that he's got to go back. He's got some work to do for sure. He's got some mental assessments to make, I think, more than anything. And this constant reshuffling of his camp, you know, that he's got to find stability in his mind and in his training. And I do think that we will see more good things from him. So I don't think he needs to be part of that conversation. JDS might be another story. You know, it feels so wrong for someone like myself to sit here in this hotel room and like talk about the future of someone, the status of Junior Dos Santos or Jacare Souza. But that's what I'm here to do. So that's what we're going to do. Listen, you have to. I think I focused maybe more on JDS because of the nature of his losses, right? Jacare had a bad knockout tonight as well, but JDS has been on the receiving end of some really difficult knockouts lately. And at some point, you want to remember your legends the way that you think of them in your head on that pedestal. You know, the BJ Penns. I like to keep BJ Penn on the BJ Penn pedestal.
From like 10 years ago, maybe more.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like to see the deterioration of some of these stars. But it's just, you can tell I'm uncomfortable having this conversation. I don't like saying it. For me, I feel like it's not for me to judge. I don't know.
And it's also tough because it's like we respect these legends. I feel like, you know, guys like Anderson Silva, you know, we want to watch them. People like Yoel Romero, we want to see them fight. But it's also that thing where it's at some point you have to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And you also feel like there's something owed to these guys for all the entertainment and the stuff that they've put their bodies on the line for. And then that's kind of like the ugly bit of the sport where you're in one day and you're out the next day. And, you know, and other companies are saying, hey, like, we don't even want to pick you up. We don't want to, you know, and you end up in this weird position where one day you're the champ and then the next day Laura Sanko is talking about what's in your future.
Brutal. I think everyone agrees. Everyone agrees that, and I think I speak for you, Laura, as well. No one wants to see anybody fired here. Everybody wants to see everybody keep their job. I guess this is the crazy reality that we're dealing with at the end of 2020. That, you know, this is nobody's decision here. This is just the decision of the company at the moment. I want to ask you though. You mentioned Jacare though. How about Kevin Holland with the switch around? You know, going from Jack Hermansson to Jacare Souza. You know, completely reshuffling his plans and getting one of the craziest knockouts because it was off his back that we've seen in a long time. What did you think of that one?
That knockout was insane. Insane. And here's I said this to someone in the back, and all due respect to Joaquin Buckley, because what he did was awesome as well. I would like to make an argument that what Kevin Holland did tonight was more awesome. Now, it's not quite, you don't get the opponent, you know, falling to the canvas and face planting that everyone likes to see on a highlight. So yes, I give that to Joaquin Buckley. But the fact that Kevin Holland was able to generate enough power to rattle Jacare Souza from what was effectively a bottom full guard position, sort of, is just insane. And he didn't even, if I remember right, he didn't even have one of his legs on the canvas.
Yeah.
His butt was on the canvas and one foot, and he sort of torqued, and he's got those long limbs, and then he just whipped that hand and clipped him enough. And God, that's the type of stuff. And I said this to him in our post-fight interview. Normally when there's a knockout or a cool finishing sequence, you know, a standard thing that I try to phrase differently is that something that you knew about coming into this fight? Or is that something you trained? That would have been a stupid question here, because clearly that's just Kevin Holland in the moment, loving to fight, loving being a fighter. And that's the type of stuff you can't train, you can't teach. And I think it is part of what makes him so dangerous, because he has the technique in those moments where he has to bring the technique in, but he's got the dog, man. He has an incredible level of just grit and dog fight in him. And I'm not gonna lie, I love the amount of shit that he talks. I love it, because I'm not like that. So I live vicariously through people who do that.
But I was gonna say, how crazy is it? So he's on his back and Jacare is sort of on top of him moments before this happens, and he tells him that he had a dream about this. He goes, I had a dream about this. And moments later, he knocks him or stops the fight only in a way that someone could see in a dream, right? It'd be like, hey, you're dreaming, man. Jacare like that would never happen. And he does it. It's absolutely unbelievable. I guess the question is, it's 5 for 5 for him, and he's sneakily had one of the best years out of everybody in the company. What do you do with Kevin Holland next? I know he's saying he wants Hamzat Chimaev and just next weekend, which, you know, I'd absolutely love to see, but, you know,
I would love to see it too, but it's not happening.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. What would you do with a guy like this next? He's happy to fight frequently. He makes the fight weeks interesting, and, you know, he comes in at 6'3", a good frame for the division, ability to finish fights. is there someone in the division who interests you? Do you still go with a guy like Jack Hermansson, or are we past that fight at this point, in your opinion?
I wouldn't mind the Marvin Vettori fight. Man, can you imagine the lead up to that?
Those guys are like almost the last couple of weeks. It was like who had the more impressive performance of the last week, the more kind of breakout young up and coming star in that division.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big week for the middleweight division for sure. I think Marvin Vettori would be interesting. I know he hates Derek Brunson for some reason. Kevin Holland will call out anyone and their sister at the same time. So I think there's going to be no shortage of people lining up to fight him. But I like the Vettori fight. I do think you could see the Hermansson fight happen, but I like the Vettori fight just purely for the amount of back and forth tension that there would be leading up to that.
Well, you also got Darren Till with the memes. Did you see Darren Till's meme of Marvin Vettori?
No, I didn't. What was it? It's not that you can verbally describe a meme, but go for it.
Let me just bring up the picture. I think there's a funny caption. I think
it's like the elephant man, right? And he's like, "Here you go, you ugly."
I think he called him an ugly fuck, Tuesday. Or yeah, pretty much.
See you next Tuesday. He called him.
We don't want the video to get demonetized, but anyway. So there's a whole bunch of rivalries cooking in there. And you know what? I think for what it's worth, Kevin Holland eclipses Khamzat Chimaev as the breakout fighter of the year, and I think Khamzat had that chance, but unfortunately, COVID took care of the Leon Edwards fight. So I think you got to give it to Kevin Holland, right?
I agree. Listen, Khamzat Chimaev absolutely deserved the moment that he had in the spotlight, but Kevin Holland, come on, 5 wins in a calendar, 5 wins, not even a full calendar year. I think it was like 9 months. And then, listen, coming into this fight, I was giving the edge to Jacare, and then when that first takedown happened, I was like, oh, this is not good for Kevin Holland. I know that Kevin Holland is very good on the ground. It's not that I was disrespecting his ground game. He has a legit black belt, but it's Jacare. It's Jacare. I mean, you don't have to say anything more than that. So for Kevin to not only get rattled, but like, I don't think he was necessarily choosing to be there, but he certainly didn't seem like he minded being there. He was throwing up triangles. It was a massive step up in competition for Kevin, and he more than met the challenge. So yes, I do think he deserves that breakout fighter of the year for sure.
Incredible. And also, you switch opponents, you go up 1 week, which is no easy feat as well, and you're dealing with COVID. He told us he didn't really feel it, but come on, you got COVID. That's just stressful on itself. And then, Laura, we were talking to him earlier this week. 2 guys are about to have a fight outside his car. He goes out, breaks up the fight, comes back and does the interview. This man does it all. He's absolutely unbelievable.
I missed that. What happened?
Well, you don't really watch our content, so it's fine. I don't want to spoil it for you. But...
I do.
Look.
I do.
Back in the day, Laura Sanko would have seen it. I guess now, just telling Junior Dos Santos to retire and doesn't watch
the amount of shade being thrown.
No, Laura's a day oneer for the record, and Laura's always had very nice things to say to us.
Absolutely.
Mutual respect.
Always supporting us in the IG comment sections too. So we don't want to hold you up much longer, Laura. So last question, because we are going into a massive fight next year with Dustin and Conor. I just want to get an early prediction from you as we finish this up. It's such an interesting fight. I was thinking about it just before you came on the program, and it's one of those things where Conor just did so well against Dustin initially, but now, Dustin has really sort of evolved as a fighter. It's a different weight class. How do you see this fight going? Do you still give it to Conor McGregor, or do you believe that there's a shot here that Dustin can get it done?
Oh, there's absolutely a shot that Dustin can get it done. Dustin is a completely different fighter than when they fought the first time. And man, this is razor thin in my mind. I don't have a strong opinion on it at the moment. I think as many things with Conor, my thoughts on him, because I hold his skill set up very, very highly, very, very highly. And I respect him a lot for taking this path, right? And not picking a fight that was not necessarily championship path material. So I like that that's already good signaling in my mind that Conor's in the right frame of mind. But with Conor, I feel like I have to see him fight week and in the lead up to kind of have an idea of where I think he's going to be. But if you just talk skill sets, I absolutely think that Dustin has what it takes to put Conor away. But that being said, Conor McGregor is a very, very, very special striker. He's an elite level striker that I think has a mastery of distance and timing that is virtually impossible to train for. You can't find people who mimic what he does and the little nuanced things that he does to shift the distance. I think that's the biggest thing that Conor does, is this deception of you think that you are within striking range and you're not, and then he immediately is within his striking range because he's got that nice long reach. So I think if you're going to put me on the spot, I do think I would probably lean Conor right now, but I'd have to do some digging about his mentality, because I think the world of Dustin Poirier, and he absolutely has everything that it would take to get Conor out of there.
Well, we love it. We love that we put you on the spot for just like an early prediction. You had as you said before, huevos to actually give a definitive prediction. So nothing but respect to you, Laura, and also respect to you for staying up so late and chatting with us yet again. Don't forget to follow Laura on Twitter and Instagram at Laura_Sanko. Follow her fantastic work. Are you going to be working the Conor event, by the way? Just out of curiosity?
I believe so. This whole Fight Island thing is very much up in the air. Probably more so than people maybe realize. So the talent has not been fully booked and scheduled yet. It's heading that direction, but I believe I will be there, but it's not 100% confirmed. I am working next weekend, so that should be a fun card. See you guys in 2021 for sure.
That's it. Yeah, good luck next weekend. We know you'll be doing a fantastic job. And then fingers crossed that you get to go to Fight Island to cover the Conor Dustin card. It's going to be a fantastic one. And enjoy your holidays. Thank you as always for taking the time with us, Laura.
Thank you, guys. Hopefully next time I talk to you, I'll be talking to you from that sexy Abu Dhabi hotel again, and not the residence inn here in Las Vegas.
We very much look forward to it. Absolutely, Laura. Thank you so much.
Is that a cockroach behind you, Laura?